They said my inheritance was worthless swampland, so I used it to flood 79 illegal mansions and destroy a corrupt HOA overnight. Picture this: Karen Ashworth Banks, HOA president, standing in her $800 Louis Vuitton boots, watching muddy water swallow her entire retirement scam. The stench of rotting cattails mixed with her panic sweat as 20 years of pressurized lake water reclaimed what was always mine. See, when you're a recently divorced electrician who just lost everything, and some entitled suburbanite tries stealing your great-uncle's 1923 land grant with fake surveys and bought-off county officials, that's when you learn federal water rights trump local corruption every single time. 6 months ago, I was Wade Thornfield, 52-year-old divorced electrician from Billings, Montana, watching my life fall apart. Plant closure cost me my job of 15 years. Divorce papers cost me half of everything else. When the lawyer called about great-uncle Ezra's will, I figured it was just one more bill I couldn't pay. You've inherited 847 acres, including Thornfield Lake, he said. Property's been in your family since 1923, but honestly, Wade, it's mostly wetland. The 6-hour drive gave me time to wonder if Uncle Ezra had done me a favor or stuck me with a tax burden. But when I crested that hill and saw Thornfield Lake for the first time, I understood why Ezra never left. 800 acres of pristine water stretched out like a mirror, fed by underground springs. The original homestead sat overlooking the water with Ezra's equipment barn nearby. And there, controlling the outlet, was the earthen dam Ezra built in the 1940s. That's when the white Escalade showed up. She climbed out wearing designer outdoor wear, clipboard in hand, fake smile plastered across her face. "Oh, honey, you must be Ezra's nephew," she said with condescension. "I'm Cordelia Ashworth Banks, president of the Willowbrook Estates Homeowners Association. We're your new neighbors." Her precious HOA bordered my property, and she'd been eyeing Uncle Ezra's land for years. "I know this must be overwhelming," she continued. "All this wetland. The boundary situation is complex, and there are environmental concerns. I'd like to make you an offer. $15,000 cash. Close next week." When I laughed, her smile tightened. "I appreciate the offer, but this land's been in my family for a century. I think I'll hold on to it." Her mask slipped. "Well, I hope you've done your research on local ordinances. The county takes environmental violations very seriously, and there are boundary disputes that could get expensive." That evening, walking the property line, I found survey stakes that weren't mine and architectural plans caught against the fence. Willowbrook Lake Resort Phase 1 to 79 luxury cabins. Suddenly, Cordelia's generous offer made perfect sense. The attack came disguised as bureaucracy. 3 days later, Cordelia filed a complaint claiming my dam violated flood management ordinances. Her evidence: a survey showing my lake had swallowed HOA land. The surveyor was Randy Banks, her brother-in-law. Time to get educated. The county clerk charged me $5 to photocopy the original 1923 land grant. There it was, every boundary, every water right, every square inch of my 847 acres, plus a 200-foot buffer zone cutting right through Cordelia's kingdom. Digging through dusty files, I found a pattern. The Hendersons got slapped with violations 6 months after refusing Cordelia's buyout. The Kowalskis faced contamination charges after saying no. Every complaint filed by the same concerned citizen, rubber-stamped by planning director Margaret Chase, Cordelia's tennis partner. Jensen Surveying cost me $1,500 I didn't have, but they carried federal certification. When Tom Jensen finished mapping my property with GPS coordinates from the original grant, his face looked like he'd seen a ghost. "Jesus Christ, Wade. Your neighbors have been squatting on federal land for 15 years. Their tennis courts, community pool, walking paths, even that fountain, all on your property. Original federal land grants trump everything. Local zoning, city ordinances, even HOA bylaws. When the U.S. government hands you a deed in 1923, that paper carries more weight than any modern survey." I called Cordelia before sunrise. "Just wanted to give you a heads up about property markers I'll be installing today." "What kind of markers?" "Oh, just correcting boundary confusion. Turns out your tennis courts are on my land. So is your pool, fountain, and half your walking trails." By lunchtime, concrete markers decorated their paradise like tombstones. HOA residents clustered around the boundary line like confused cattle, pointing at signs declaring half their amenities illegal. Cordelia's Escalade arrived with air raid siren subtlety. This is harassment. For what? Standing on my own land. I held up the federal survey. You're the one trespassing, sweetheart. Cordelia's next move came gift-wrapped in environmental bullshit. The county wanted an emergency environmental impact assessment of my dam. Price tag, $50,000. For a guy on unemployment, that's financial death. But Uncle Ezra had taught me never to trust surface appearances. I spent the morning crawling through my dam with a flashlight. Hidden beneath decades of grass lay reinforced concrete, steel mesh erosion control, drainage systems so sophisticated they belonged in textbooks. Uncle Ezra had built this using 1940s WPA standards tougher than anything constructed today. Time for water education. My great-grandfather's 1923 irrigation permit gave me senior water rights to every drop. In water law, first in time, first in right, means I owned the water before Cordelia's neighborhood existed. On Thursday morning, I made a simple adjustment to the dam's release valves. Reduced downstream flow by 30%. By noon, Cordelia's decorative paradise was dying. Her artificial creek turned into a pathetic trickle. The fountain systems wheezed before falling silent. Prize-winning flower beds started wilting. My phone exploded. You psychotic bastard. What did you do to our water? Morning, Cordelia. Just exercising my water rights. Agricultural permits from 1923 trump your sprinkler systems by 90 years. This is extortion. This is water law, sweetheart. Google it. By evening, desperate HOA residents were bucket brigading pool water to dying roses. But Cordelia wasn't done playing dirty. A county engineer showed up for emergency inspection. After 3 hours crawling through my dam's chambers and reviewing Uncle Ezra's maintenance logs, he emerged looking like he'd discovered treasure. Mr. Thornfield, this is the finest small-scale dam I've encountered in 2 decades. Your great-uncle was a genuine artist. His report rated my structure as exemplary. Cordelia's environmental complaints got stamped frivolous in red letters. Cordelia's response was nuclear. Bulldozers arrived before sunrise Monday, diesel engines shattering dawn quiet. I watched century-old oak trees crash into my lake. She'd conjured emergency development permits overnight, claiming flood risk required immediate replacement housing. By noon, ancient cottonwoods were floating belly up in water running brown with diesel fuel. 24-hour crews turned my sanctuary into hell. But what snapped my last thread was finding Luna, the young doe I'd watched drink from the shallows every morning. I found her tangled in construction wire, drowned in muddy runoff. Her dark eyes stared at nothing while fuel slicks swirled around her fur. That's when I stopped playing defense and started planning annihilation. The weapon that would destroy Cordelia's empire was hiding in Uncle Ezra's basement gun safe. After trying every combination, desperate and whiskey-fueled, I punched in the lake's GPS coordinates. The door swung open. Inside lay documents that made my hands shake. The original 1923 contract between my great-grandfather and the U.S. Bureau of Reclamation. Thornfield Lake was designated emergency water supply for 3 downstream counties. Uncle Ezra held official federal authority as emergency water management operator. Federal authority superseded everything. During drought emergencies, I could legally control every drop flowing downstream. The climate data showed 3 consecutive years of dropping water tables, 18 months of documented drought meeting federal emergency criteria. Those 79 luxury cabins sat in what federal law classified as a flood zone during emergency operations. Every permit Cordelia had bought became worthless the moment I activated emergency authority. War requires allies. My first call went to Marcus Rivera, an environmental lawyer who specialized in making federal agencies remember they had teeth. Wade, do you realize what you're sitting on? Federal Emergency Water Authority trumps everything: state law, local ordinances, even congressional districts. Next came Dr. Sarah White, a hydrologist whose research had been cited in congressional hearings. She agreed to conduct ecological assessment and calculate restoration requirements justifying controlled flooding. Tommy Tank Morrison, a local contractor screwed out of the HOA project, provided insider knowledge about safety violations and creative accounting, keeping Cordelia's project barely legal. The real game changer came from tribal liaison Elena Crow Feather at the courthouse. Your lake was a sacred site before European settlement. Our tribal council has been looking for ways to protect indigenous cultural sites. Chairman Robert Crow Feather brought legal resources I hadn't known existed. The U.S. government has treaty obligations to protect sites of cultural significance. If we document historical ceremonial use, your lake becomes protected under federal cultural preservation statutes. My coalition was complete: environmental lawyer, university scientist, local contractor, and tribal nation. Each brought different weapons to the same war. The preparation took 3 weeks. Marcus filed federal emergency water management declarations while challenging every HOA permit. Dr. White documented ecological damage, calculating restoration requirements. Tank provided construction intelligence and financial pressure data. Chairman Crow Feather's tribal lawyers filed cultural preservation claims, adding another layer of federal protection. Labor Day weekend arrived like a visible storm. Cordelia hired Pinnacle Public Relations to rebrand her illegal development as an economic miracle threatened by environmental terrorism. The media blitz painted me as the villain. Local radio ran ads about extremists destroying family dreams. The newspaper published "When Environmental Activism Goes Too Far," with photos of cabin families who'd invested life savings. But Cordelia's real masterpiece was her Labor Day festival. 200 people expected, state legislators invited, news crews filming. The message: Wade Thornfield versus civilization. What none knew was Cordelia's financial empire held together with desperation and accounting fraud. Tank documented $2.8 million in unpaid contractor bills, construction loans leveraged against pre-sold cabins that hadn't passed inspection. Cordelia had personally guaranteed most debt. If sales fell through, she'd lose everything. The festival kicked off at noon with mariachi bands and barbecue smoke. From my position half a mile away, I could see crowds gathering around Cordelia's podium, families photographing cabins representing their financial futures. At 2:45 p.m., I received final authorization via encrypted email. All paperwork approved. Emergency Water Authority officially active. Cordelia took the podium at exactly 3 p.m. Today represents triumph of progress over extremism. That's when I opened the dam. Emergency sirens started wailing at 3:03 p.m., their mechanical screams announcing the end of her empire. I arrived driving Uncle Ezra's restored 1950s Ford pickup, its diesel rumbling like thunder as 200 stunned faces turned toward the sound. The truck bed carried federal documents, portable PA system, and Marcus Rivera in his best suit. FBI agent Sarah Chun rode shotgun, badge visible enough to make the crowd nervous. Following behind came Dr. White, Chairman Crow Feather, and Tank with evidence boxes. Cordelia stood frozen at her podium as dam sirens continued their warning. Her face cycled through confusion, recognition, and terror as she realized what those sirens meant. "Ladies and gentlemen," I announced, voice carrying across rising water, "I need to interrupt this celebration with federal business. Cordelia, you might want to step away from that microphone before you say something landing you in federal prison. This is harassment. I'm calling the sheriff." "The sheriff's already here," Agent Chun announced, credentials held high, along with federal investigators and tribal representatives. "Ms. Ashworth Banks, you're under arrest for conspiracy to defraud federal water management systems." "Folks," I continued as handcuffs appeared, "let me explain what your HOA president has been hiding. Every construction permit was obtained through fraudulent emergency declarations. The cabins you purchased were built in federally designated flood zones without proper environmental review." Dr. White stepped forward. "Construction activities violated 17 federal environmental protection statutes, contaminating water sources and destroying protected wetlands." Chairman Crow Feather delivered the final blow. "This lake is a sacred site under federal cultural preservation treaties. All development permits are invalidated. The land will be restored to its natural state. You can't do this." Cordelia screamed, fighting handcuffs. "These people invested everything." "No," I said, stepping close enough for cameras to catch every word. "You destroyed them when you sold property you knew was illegal. You destroyed them when you forged permits and bribed officials. You destroyed them when you chose greed over honesty." The water level had risen visibly, lapping at cabin foundations like liquid justice. The controlled flooding proceeded exactly as calculated, dramatic enough for television, precise enough to avoid casualties. The flooding will continue 48 hours. Federal Emergency Authority requires restoration of natural water levels to protect downstream communities from drought conditions. As federal agents led Cordelia toward vehicles, she managed one final scream. "This isn't over. You psychotic bastard." "Yes," I called back. "It really is." The festival crowd stood in stunned silence as lake water continued patient reclamation of stolen shoreline, washing away foundations of Cordelia's empire, one cabin at a time. Justice sounds exactly like moving water. 6 months later, Cordelia Ashworth Banks was serving 18 months in federal prison. Her mugshot, designer makeup smeared, fake eyelashes askew, became an internet meme captioned, "When Karens meet federal authority." The real victory came in what we built from wreckage. The Ezra Thornfield Environmental Trust now owns 1,200 acres around the lake. 35 original cabin buyers worked with me developing an eco-friendly lakeside community that enhanced rather than destroyed the environment. The annual Thornfield Lake Conservation Festival draws 10,000 visitors every Labor Day, celebrating environmental restoration. I kept Uncle Ezra's homestead as permanent residence, finally finding peace. The trust established scholarships for students pursuing environmental careers and serves as a model for fighting development fraud. Sometimes the best revenge isn't getting even. It's building something better from the ashes of what they tried to destroy.